August 27th, 2005. The air in New Orleans was thick, not just with heat, but with a strange, heavy quiet. It was the kind of stillness that makes old men glance at the sky and mutter warnings under their breath. Inside a modest shotgun house on St. Claude Avenue, 32-year-old nurse Rebecca "Becky" Delacroix folded a spare set of scrubs into her overnight bag. She moved carefully, methodically, as if memorizing each motion. The local news anchor's voice buzzed from the small kitchen TV. Katrina has strengthened to a Category 3. Evacuation orders now include Orleans Parish. But Becky didn't flinch. She had made up her mind 2 days ago. Her mother, Lorraine, stood in the doorway, arms folded, eyes brimming. "You don't have to go," she said softly. "They'll understand. You have a daughter." Becky glanced toward the hallway, where 8-year-old Talia sat on the floor, cradling her stuffed bear, listening. "They need me at the hospital, Mama," Becky replied. "Some of those patients can't leave. You know that." Lorraine exhaled, her voice breaking. "And who'll be there for you?" Becky paused, then crossed the room and hugged her mother tightly. "I'll be home before the storm even passes," she whispered. "Promise." Charity Hospital, the towering beige structure on Tulane Avenue, was one of the oldest public hospitals in the country. Underfunded, overworked, and teetering for years, but still standing, still saving. By the time Becky arrived at 9 p.m. that Saturday night, the ER was already full. Some patients had refused to evacuate. Others had nowhere to go. Becky changed into her scrubs and joined the triage nurses. There were 22 patients in the ICU alone who could not be moved, many on ventilators, others in fragile post-op states. "We'll ride it out like we always do," said Dr. Alan Metz, a veteran ER doctor in his 60s. "We've got the generator, supplies for 72 hours. We're ready." But they weren't. August 29th, 2005. Hurricane Katrina made landfall at 6:10 a.m. The Category 5 winds had weakened slightly, but the storm surge had not. Within hours, the levees breached. Water poured into the city like an unstoppable tide of silence and ruin. By noon, over 80% of New Orleans was underwater. Charity Hospital, built to withstand hurricanes, stood its ground. But the basement flooded, and with it, the backup generators. The lights flickered, then failed. The humming of machines, the rhythm of ventilators, stopped. And that's when Becky stepped forward. She and a small group of nurses began handbagging every ICU patient, manually pumping oxygen, one patient at a time, hour after hour. No air conditioning, no elevators, no way in, no way out. By day 2, the food had dwindled. By day 3, the water was running low. Helicopters flew overhead, but the hospital received no supplies, no aid. At night, Becky would sing softly to patients to soothe their fear. She rotated with others, helping elderly patients down 6 flights of stairs for sponge baths with bottled water. She hadn't slept in 2 days. Lorraine and Talia sat huddled in Baton Rouge, watching the news. Each day passed without word from Becky. Cell towers were down, the city unreachable. Lorraine held the old landline, praying it would ring. It never did. By September 1st, the situation inside Charity Hospital had become desperate. The corridors were lined with makeshift cots. The morgue had no refrigeration. Patients were dying, not from injuries, but from heat, dehydration, and the slow breakdown of human systems without power. And still, Becky stayed. She'd fashioned a chart of duties taped to the ICU wall. Every hour was accounted for. Vitals, water checks, rotate the manual vents. No one gets left behind, she'd say. At one point, a fellow nurse, Melanie Harris, pulled her aside. "You haven't eaten today." Becky just smiled faintly. "If I sit down, I might not get up again." Outside, the city had dissolved into chaos. The streets, once vibrant with jazz and life, were now a silent graveyard of waterlogged cars, overturned furniture, and floating debris. Looting spread, so did fear. Some hospitals had been evacuated, but not charity. FEMA helicopters passed overhead daily, but for reasons no one could explain, they skipped over the beige building with the large red cross on its roof. On the morning of September 2nd, Becky climbed to the rooftop, waving a white bedsheet. She tied it to a rusted antenna and spelled out "Need medical evac" with bright orange gauze strips. Dr. Metz joined her, his hands trembling as he lit a flare. 5 days, and they still haven't come. "I don't understand," Becky said. "We're a hospital. Why would they pass us?" Dr. Metz shook his head. "Because the map says we're not flooded. Because someone marked us green." That night, Becky sat beside a 76-year-old man named Walter, who'd been recovering from a bypass. His wife, Lillian, had been in the waiting room when the storm hit, and now slept on a cot beside his bed. "You're like an angel," Lillian whispered to Becky. "You saved him. You're saving all of us." Becky smiled, brushing a damp strand of hair from her forehead. "I'm just a nurse. This is what we do." But even angels have limits. On September 3rd, the smell of decay had become inescapable. The halls were dark, batteries were gone, medication was running low. Becky stood in the hallway near the pediatric wing, holding the hand of a young girl with cerebral palsy as her mother wept quietly. She didn't cry, not once. Instead, she focused on tasks, on people, on keeping others upright. That evening, a rescue team finally arrived, not FEMA, not military, but a small flotilla of civilian volunteers from Texas aboard 2 John boats. They ferried the most critical patients first. Dr. Metz insisted Becky go with the second wave. She refused. "I'm not leaving until the last one is safe." By the morning of September 4th, most of the hospital's patients had been evacuated, but a small group of staff, including Becky, stayed behind to wait for the final boat. The water level had risen again during the night. Snakes were in the stairwells. The stench of sewage was overpowering. Melanie found Becky in the chapel on the 3rd floor. "You should come with me," she said. "That boat's leaving in 10 minutes." Becky looked up from where she knelt, a rosary in her hands. "I'll come on the next one," she said. But no next boat came. By the time military medics finally reached Charity Hospital on September 6th, they found only silence. The building was empty, except for 4 deceased patients and a nurse's ID badge left on the chapel pew. Rebecca Delacroix. In Baton Rouge, Lorraine received the news from a Red Cross volunteer. Talia, sitting nearby, watched her grandmother crumble into tears. She didn't fully understand. "Mama's still helping people," she whispered. "She said she would." For weeks, the city remained paralyzed. Bodies were still being recovered. Families clung to missing person flyers, taping them to fences, street lamps, and the broken windows of gas stations. Rebecca's photo, in her nurse's scrubs, smiling, was one of them. Lorraine made daily calls to hospitals, morgues, churches, even radio stations. "Have you seen her?" Rebecca Delacroix, nurse, Charity Hospital. She gave interviews. She walked through shelters in Baton Rouge and Houston, holding up a faded photo. Some said they remembered her. A woman who helped lift a child onto a boat. A nurse who handed out bottled water to strangers. But the stories blurred. The faces were uncertain. No one could say for sure. In October, 6 weeks after the storm, FEMA released a partial report. It listed over 1,100 confirmed deaths in Louisiana. Among them, 17 unnamed hospital personnel believed lost during rescue delays. Rebecca's name was not on that list. Not officially. Her body had never been recovered, but her absence echoed louder than any confirmation. Months passed. Talia returned to school. Lorraine took custody. The house on St. Claude Avenue sat quiet, untouched. Water damage crawling up the walls like rot. Inside on the kitchen counter, the small TV still sat where Becky had left it, frozen on a frame from the news, blurry with static. One afternoon, Talia walked into the hallway and stood in the doorway of her mother's room. She looked around. The scent of lavender was still faint on the pillows. Her mother's nurse badge hung from a hook on the dresser. Talia picked it up, pressed it to her chest, and whispered, "I know why you didn't come back." In 2006, a year after Katrina, a memorial was built outside Charity Hospital. A rough granite stone engraved with 48 names of medical workers who stayed through the storm. Volunteers, doctors, technicians. Rebecca Delacroix's name wasn't there. Dr. Metz, who had retired to North Carolina, returned that summer. He met Lorraine and Talia at the hospital ruins, now shuttered, windows dark. "She wouldn't leave until the last patient was safe," he said. "She kept us together. She kept us sane." He paused, and then she disappeared, just like the lights. In 2010, a documentary crew creating a film on forgotten medical heroes of Katrina interviewed Lorraine and Talia. The project, Voices from the Waterline, aired on PBS the following spring. It included grainy camcorder footage from a civilian rescuer on September 3rd. In one shot, barely a few seconds, a nurse in blue scrubs ties a gauze banner to a pole atop a hospital. The wind rips it sideways. Her face is turned, but her hair, her frame, unmistakable. Lorraine paused the video and touched the screen. "She was there," she whispered. "She really stayed." Today, nearly 2 decades later, a new hospital stands blocks away. University Medical Center, New Orleans. Sleek, modern, resilient. But the old halls of Charity still stand, abandoned. Its windows boarded, its stairwells dark, its walls thick with silence. Local nurses sometimes leave flowers at the locked gate. A few still remember Becky's name. And in one corner of the ER nurses' lounge, someone once carved into the wall, behind a rusted cabinet, nearly hidden. Nurse Becky stayed till the end. September 2021, 16 years after the storm, Talia stood outside the chain-link fence that surrounded the ruins of old Charity Hospital. Weeds pushed up through the cracked pavement. The once beige walls were blackened with mold and time. A faded red cross was still visible on the north side. She was 24 now, a nursing student at LSU. Clutched in her hand was the same photo Lorraine had carried for years. Her mother, smiling in blue scrubs, hair tied back, eyes focused, determined. Talia had come for one reason, to remember. She placed a single white flower in the fence. Then she slipped a note through the wires. It read, "I start clinicals next month, Mom. I hope I make you proud. I'm not afraid, because you weren't." She stood in silence. The wind stirred the paper gently, then stilled. That night, she returned to the small Baton Rouge apartment she shared with Lorraine. Her grandmother was older now, slower, but still sharp. Over dinner, they talked about textbooks, exams, and scrubs. But eventually, the conversation always returned to Becky. "I wonder," Talia said, "how she stayed so calm all those days, with no help, no answers." Lorraine looked up. "She didn't stay calm," she said softly. "She stayed brave." In the spring of 2022, Talia wrote a paper for her ethics in nursing class. The title was simple: She Stayed. She detailed not just her mother's final days, but the systemic failures that led to them. The miscommunications, the delayed evacuations, the bureaucratic blindness. Her professor, a retired trauma nurse, read it twice, then called her to the front of the class and said, "Your mother didn't just save lives. She gave the rest of us a standard." The paper was published in the Louisiana Nursing Journal, then picked up by a regional publication on healthcare heroes. A journalist from NPR contacted Talia, asking to interview her for a feature called The Last Nurse Out. The segment aired nationally. Thousands listened. Some cried. The following year, the Louisiana State Nursing Association voted to posthumously recognize Rebecca Delacroix with the Florence Nightingale Award for Courage in Crisis. At the ceremony, Talia stepped onto the stage in a navy blue dress, her mother's badge in her hand. The applause lasted nearly 2 full minutes. She didn't speak from notes. My mother believed nursing wasn't just a job. It was a calling. She believed no one should die alone. And she believed in staying, even when staying cost her everything. There were tears in the audience, not just from nurses, but from survivors, patients who had been there. One elderly man, Walter Daniels, stood up and said aloud, "She kept me alive." Her hands never shook. By 2023, Charity Hospital was scheduled for full demolition. The city approved a memorial space on the original footprint, a small healing garden and a commemorative wall. Talia was invited to help design it. She chose simple words for the bronze plaque, in honor of those who stayed, especially the ones who never came home. Beneath the title, in slightly larger print, Rebecca Becky Delacroix, RN, 1973 to 2005. No one gets left behind. May 2024. The morning air was warm and still, the kind that pressed gently against the skin and carried the scent of something blooming. The newly finished memorial garden, built on the footprint of old Charity Hospital, had just opened to the public. Talia stood quietly beneath the oak tree at the center of the courtyard. Around her, engraved stones bore the names of nurses, doctors, orderlies. Dozens who had stayed behind during Hurricane Katrina. Some survived, some did not. Becky's name was there now, clear, permanent. As visitors slowly filed in, some laying flowers, others touching names with reverent fingers, Talia looked up at the sky, pale blue and cloudless. She closed her eyes and let the silence wrap around her. A young girl, no older than 10, walked up to the plaque with her mother. She read the name aloud. Rebecca Delacroix. Was she a hero? Her mother nodded. Yes, she was. The girl stared at the name a moment longer, then turned to look at Talia. Are you her daughter? Talia smiled. Yes, I am. The girl tilted her head. Do you miss her? Talia didn't answer right away. She knelt down so they were eye level. Every day. But I also carry her. Where? Talia pointed to her heart. Right here. Later that week, a letter arrived at Talia's apartment. It was handwritten, shaky but deliberate. It read, Dear Miss Delacroix, my name is Joseph Rivera. I was a janitor at Charity Hospital in 2005. I've wanted to write this for years. Your mother helped me carry patients down 6 flights of stairs during the blackout. She bandaged my hand when I cut it. She gave me half her lunch. She prayed with me. When the boats came, I left. She stayed. I never said thank you. So here it is. Thank you. You should know, she didn't just save lives. She gave people hope when there was none. I still remember the sound of her humming. She hummed gospel while the wind howled. That's what I remember most. She was light in the dark. Sincerely, Joseph. Talia held the letter to her chest. She didn't cry. She just whispered, "She made it. You made it." Years will pass. New nurses will come. Storms will rise again, as they always do. But some names, some stories, linger in the walls long after the building is gone. Rebecca Delacroix never made it home, but she never truly left. She is remembered in the silence between sirens, in the grip of a nurse's hand during a code blue, in the soft voice at a patient's bedside saying, "I'm here. I won't leave you." If this story moved you, if it reminded you of someone you've loved, someone you've lost, or someone who stayed when they didn't have to, subscribe to the channel, like this video, share it with someone who believes in quiet courage, and leave a comment below. Tell us who your heroes are. Because sometimes the ones who never came home are the ones who never really left.